Hello, I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad. As some of you will know from the last video, I'm currently in Ireland, traveling around, and I actually thought about doing this video from within the house I'm staying at, and then I thought, why don't I just show it to you all? This is a house that's very close to a town called Lismore. I might be pronouncing that horribly. Sorry to any Irish viewers, particularly from this part of Ireland. It's about an hour out of Cork, probably between Cork and Waterford, in the very south end of Ireland. And it's a lovely part of the world, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's making me think lots of thoughts about the UK in relation to Ireland and vice versa. And I have come to some thoughts. And one of them that's big, as you will see from the title of the video, is the fact that the Irish economy is much better than the UK one, at least by certain metrics. One metric in particular being GDP per capita. So, GDP per capita in Ireland is about double what it is in the UK. That sounds implausible, I think, to some of you, but it's true. Statistically speaking, it is the case. GDP per capita in Ireland is a little over $100,000 US, because you usually do US per capita. I mean, you can do it in any currency, but the common one is US dollars, and so it's about 100k US, and the UK is just over about 50k US. So yeah, by double. Now, some people say this is fudged, that the Irish are fudging this in some way, basically because they say this includes the fact that there's a lot of companies, a lot of big multinationals park themselves in Ireland, or they park their European offices in Ireland, because Ireland has a lower rate of corporation tax, which we will come on to. It's quite important to this conversation. But people are saying, oh, well, that fudges things, and it means that the fact that GDP per capita, statistically speaking, in Ireland is 100k is ephemeral, or just somehow not really quite true. I will come on to that. I think that's bollocks, and I will come on to why I think so. I think that it's true enough to say that Irish GDP per capita is double that of the UK. It's a better economy. And in fact, when you're here traveling around Ireland, and you're traveling all over the place, you can feel it. Ireland's a much more prosperous place overall than the UK, particularly if you take out London. So, actually, the GDP per capita in the UK is only as high as it is because of London. Because GDP per capita in London is about 85,000, again in dollars, per capita. So closer to Ireland. But you strip that out, and given how large London is, you suddenly come upon a GDP that's lower than $40,000 per capita, again in US dollars, which would make it poorer than any US state, including the poorest, which I believe is Mississippi. So that's, yeah, the UK is actually, I think it's a poorer place than we think. There's this idea that we keep getting told that, you know, it's the fifth or sixth or whatever largest economy in the world, etc., etc. Part of that is the UK is actually quite a large place, and for a Western economy of its size, it's got a large population, and therefore it's the overall size of its economy. The UK's economy is quite impressive. The problem being is that when you break that down to per capita, and you're looking at places like the US or like Ireland, it suddenly doesn't seem very impressive. And when you strip London out of that, again, it gets less impressive still. But we could flip this around and say, also, it's a success story of Ireland. There was some worry in 2016 when the UK voted to leave the European Union. What would happen to Ireland? Would Ireland suffer greatly because of this? What would they do about the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland? What would happen to Irish trade generally, particularly with the UK? Would it be forced into a position where it would have to leave the European Union as well? And of course, none of that has happened, and Ireland has prospered. The economy is doing better than ever. So I've boiled this down to two big reasons. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say economies are complex, and there's obviously more than two reasons why Ireland has a larger GDP per capita than the UK. That's obviously the case. What I'm trying to do is look at the two two of the bigger reasons, and actually two of the more interesting reasons, because they split neatly across left and right, which is why they interest me, right? Okay, so reason number one, I believe, for the UK economy being so much worse than the Irish one, at least per capita, is Brexit. So what you've seen really is a stagnation of the UK economy from the crash. So the UK economy's never really recovered from the crash, which ironically enough is probably one of the reasons why the vote to leave happened in 2016. You know, we had 8 years of complete stagnation and people were pissed off about it. And Brexit, so the referendum seemed like a chance to break with what was happening and create something new. It didn't turn out to be that way. It certainly hasn't been that way yet. And I don't think it will be, but that's a matter of opinion for me. And so basically we had a situation in the UK where we've had stagnation since the crash. And to give you some idea, in 2008, when the crash happened, GDP per capita in the UK was about commensurate with the US. They were really pretty much on par. In fact, I think in 2007, the UK was slightly ahead of the US, which sounds absurd now from a 2025 position. But what you've seen is basically a flatlining of UK growth, and then the US has just gone up. And it's a similar thing with Ireland. I mean, Ireland was notably poor per GDP back in 2007-8, and now it's, stormed ahead and it's double the UK's GDP per capita. And I think Brexit, one of the things about Brexit is Ireland has really taken advantage as much as they could. They were sort of given a shit sandwich in the fact that the UK was leaving the EU and how that was going to affect them. And in fact, what they've managed to do is play all their cards fairly wisely. I think one of the things that was really done well from Ireland's perspective was the Irish government talking Boris Johnson in particular into basically abandoning Northern Ireland into the EU customs union, which basically was a huge win for Ireland, I think, because it brought Northern Ireland into its orbit. It meant that there was a trade between Northern Ireland and the Republic that could expand, and that would be in everyone on the island's economic interests at the very least, because then what would happen is you'd have that, and then what Ireland did is really expand its trade with France, with the rest of the European continent, to really make up for the fact that it was going to lose so much in UK traffic because of Brexit. So, and on the flip side of that, the UK has had to deal consistently with the downsides of Brexit, with losing access to the single market, losing access to economies like Ireland. I mean, not losing it completely, but just making it so much harder to trade with them because of the excess trade barriers. I mean, it's a very simple thing. When you put up trade barriers, you get less trade. And when you liberalize trade, when you decrease trade barriers, you get more trade. It's a very basic economic fact that is proven to be true again and again and again. And somehow Brexiteers think that Brexit was the thing that was going to defy this trend, or at the very least trade would open up elsewhere in the world to such an extent that the loss of trade in the EU would make up for it. And of course that hasn't happened, and we haven't seen that, and we have no evidence that that will ever be the case. So I think a big problem for you essentially, you have Ireland that's in the EU taking huge advantage of it in the single market, storming ahead with it. It's a big advantage for Ireland. They are now the sort of one naturally English-speaking country in the EU. They can take advantage of that. They can take advantage of that across the world. And so you're seeing that. So Ireland have sort of made the best out of Brexit and have sort of turned any of the negatives around into positives, while the UK has floundered outside of the single market. We've seen that. And you can say, well, it was floundering before. It was floundering before. That's quite a mouthful. But it certainly has. Brexit hasn't made it better. And I think we're going to have to come to a point in the next few years where everyone just admits that Brexit didn't fix the problems, and in fact, it made most of the problems worse. So Brexit's the first one. The second one is more where people on the left won't really like it. And one of the reasons that Ireland does so well, and this comes back to its GDP per capita thing and why people think it's fudged, or people will make an argument that it's fudged, is it has, for instance, a lot of advantages for companies to come here. It has very low corporation tax. So to give you an idea, corporation tax here and now is like a staggering, it's like 12.5%, which is amazing, versus, well, it's 25% in the UK if you're a sizable company. It goes down to 19% if you're a much smaller company, but that's really for quite small companies. It doesn't take you very long to get to the 25% mark, and any multinational will just immediately hit it. So essentially for multinationals, the corporation tax rate is half of what it is. It's half of what it, in Ireland, it's half of what it is in the UK, which is pretty staggering, really. And what people on the left would argue is, well, but you're lowering tax, and that isn't going to, you're not going to get anything. You're going to lose out on all this revenue, right? What we should be doing is not giving huge tax breaks to these multinationals who just want to set up because they want they want to pay less tax. What we should be doing is rinsing these big companies. The corporate tax rate should be higher, etc., etc. What you find, what Ireland demonstrates actually quite brilliantly, is that actually when you lower the corporation tax rate, what you get is companies will turn up and pay tax here. And they'll pay a lot because everybody wants to be here because it's lower. So what you're finding in Ireland, for instance, is they are running quite remarkable surpluses, budget surpluses, right? So in other words, they're taking more away in tax than they're spending. And it's not like Ireland doesn't have a fairly generous, public services regime. It's not like it's austerity on wheels here. It's just that they're actually taking so much in tax. And again, they're taking so much in tax because the tax rates are lower. Do you see? And that, I think that fries a lot of people on the left's brains. Less you lower the tax rates, people storm in, they pay it, and then you have more tax revenue. Do you see what I mean? As opposed to going, it's too high, I'm not going to pay. It's actually basic economics when you think about it. It's like if you lower the price of something, people will sell more, people will buy more, right? And if you put the price of something up, people will buy less. Of course, there's a point where you sell it for so little that it's pointless, right? Or you put the price so low that it doesn't matter how many you sell, you're selling them at a loss. Point being is that if you put the tax rates down, more people will come, more companies will come, more people will pay it. Now this comes to the whole, why do people think that the GDP per capita being as high as it is in Ireland is fudged? It's because, and it's weird that people on the right make this, and I think this comes back to Brexit, this idea that they would, when it comes to a fight between Brexit and traditional right-wing economic politics, Brexit has to win, basically. So if something feels like it's justified, or it's going to turn into an anti-Brexit argument, the right will then, in Britain, they'll rather make the left-wing argument. So I've heard a lot of people on the right argue this about how, oh, well, no, it's not that high in Ireland. It's because, and then they make this argument, which is an entirely left-wing argument, which is, well, it's just because they keep the corporation tax low and all these companies just turn up and they have these, they just have offices here, and it's only because of the corporation tax, and they turn up and they pay the corporation tax, and they don't do anything else for the economy, and they don't blah, 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 blah. I mean, A, that's not true. But B, even if it were true, why is it bad for a bunch of multinationals to turn up and just dump a bunch of money into your treasury for not really asking for anything out in return, just because your rates are low? Seems like just a really good idea. You tell me what I'm missing, but it just seems like it's working really well for Ireland. Like really, really, really well. They're running surpluses. Keep in mind, we're running deficits in the UK, and I don't think a lot of people don't understand this enough, the difference between deficit and debt, right? Debt is how much the UK owes overall across time, right? Just what is the UK's bill overall? Deficits right? Or you are adding to the debt because you are spending more. It's the idea is the deficit is the difference between what you've taken in tax revenue and what you spent. The point being is that the UK every single year for God knows how long, I'd have to go back and check, has run a deficit, and usually a pretty sizable one. And that's why the debt's so big and getting bigger, right? If we were running surpluses, then that would be a different story, right? Because we'd be bringing down the debt. The amount that we'd be servicing the debt would actually be going to making the debt smaller, etc., right? You're actually building up a fund for the government to have instead of being in debt. And that's what Ireland's doing. And that just seems to be good. So the economy seems to be doing well. Everywhere you go in the country, I've been across huge swathes of the country now. I'd been to Ireland before, but I just hadn't been to as many places in Ireland as I have been this month. And yeah, everywhere feels fairly prosperous in a way that lots of the UK does not. Lots of Britain feels quite poor. Lots of England and Wales in particular feel quite poor. When you get outside the particularly prosperous places, which of course there are, you find poverty that's pretty high pretty quickly. And I just haven't seen that in Ireland. I'm not saying everyone in Ireland's rich. I'm not saying Ireland doesn't have any poverty. It's a country like any other, and of course it has poverty. It's just evidently, to me, it has less. And statistically, it has less. So if you look at the stats, it says it has less, and then you come here and you drive around and you go to different places and you go, yeah, it feels more prosperous. So it isn't just that some fudge where, corporations are turning up and dumping a whole bunch of money. I don't even understand how that's a fudge anyway, but we've dealt with that. So those are the two big things. Is Ireland's in the EU, Britain isn't. That's to Britain's distinct disadvantage, as I think time is proving. And Ireland has lower tax. It has lower tax rates, particularly lower corporation tax, and that's luring for people to come in. It's luring for businesses. It's luring because then there's more business and there's more stuff around, and it just creates a whole whirlwind of things, which makes Ireland a much more attractive place for people who want to start businesses, people who are scientists, people who want to do a whole bunch of stuff to come. And particularly given, like, if you're British now, you can't go and live anywhere in the EU, but you can still come to Ireland because of the common area. So Brits can come to Ireland, live, and I think a lot more of them will do so in the coming years. Particularly given you can live here for however many years it is, 5 years, 6, I'm not sure actually of the rules, but you can live here for a certain period of time as a resident, all through the common area, all by being a British citizen, and then you end up with an Irish passport, which, I don't need to remind you, is an EU passport, which then means you are an EU citizen again. Will be attractive for a lot of people, I think. So those are my two reasons: Brexit and lower taxes. In a way, the whole thing is a sort of centre-right argument. There's not even any left-wingism, because the whole idea that being in the EU is somehow left-wing is completely weird and doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments, please leave them. You probably will. A lot of them will probably be rude. I'm kidding. Actually, a lot of the comments, particularly recently, have been lovely. So please keep them coming. I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad, coming to you from Lismore, Ireland. It's a lovely day today. I hope it's a lovely day wherever you are. If you've got this far into the video, obviously, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 500, which is a big thing in YouTube land, and it'd be great if you could. So thank you very much. I will see you soon. Bye.